Hi guys, Victoria here. Before we get to the podcast, I wanted to be sure you knew about the Dog Behavior Conference, which will be held on April the 21st to the 23rd. It's online, so you can join from anywhere, and you get full access to all recordings from the conference for 1 year, so it's okay if you can't join us live. You can register now at dogbehaviorconference.com, and I hope to see you there. And now, on to the podcast. My guest today, I think I have a lot in common with her, and you'll find out why. She is Philippa Tomson. She is a TV news journalist, and you will have seen her everywhere, but particularly on Good Morning Britain. And as I said, we do share an experience, and it's an experience that not a lot of people have experienced. So I wanted her to come on the show to talk to her about it. And here she is. Welcome, Philippa. I'm really, really glad you're here.
Ditto. Thank you so much for having me. I cannot wait to talk to you about all things dog.
I know. And you are mother to some amazing dogs, and I do want to talk a little bit about them later. But first of all, people certainly in the UK will know you because you're on Good Morning Britain, and you kind of, as you said, do everything. Because like when I watch it, sometimes I see you're swimming in a lake or in the ocean. I don't know, in the very early morning, I saw that. I was like, you're so brave. Or you're interviewing a politician, or you're at the desk. And I'm like, your job is so interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a TV news journalist? And like, what is your typical day?
I think I became a TV news journalist because I get bored very easily, Victoria. That means I have to have lots of variety in my day, whether that's, meeting different people, going to different places. My career actually started in newspapers. So I left school when I was 18 after my A-levels, and I trained as a newspaper reporter on my local publication, and I did papers for about 6 years, freelanced on one of the national papers in London, which I don't need to name, but probably wouldn't say was the nicest of experiences. And I thought, no, I'm not a cutthroat tabloid reporter here. And I'd always, I think, had a hankering about live television. I wanted to work in live TV because there's such a buzz to it. It's a bit of an adrenaline rush. I loved the deadlines of newspapers, and I really wanted to experience the deadlines of live television. So then I joined ITV, one of ITV's regional stations in Birmingham, and I had 4 very happy years there. In fact, it was while I was living in Birmingham that I got my first dog, if you like. We'd always had dogs as a family, but I got my first dog. And then I became a regional news anchor presenter up in the northeast of England, in Newcastle, in good old Tyne Tees region. Lived up there for a while. And then I came to London and started freelancing. And then everything led to Good Morning Britain. And here we are today. And
how long have you done that show for? Because I mean, it is, I have to say, I really love it. I love it because it's so varied, and it can be explosive sometimes, mm-hmm. and that's it. British morning television is the best. But how long have you been doing that for?
I started, I've been there since it launched, actually, which was in March 2014.
Gosh.
Yeah. I've seen quite a few changes, quite a few on-screen dramas, few off-screen ones as well. But it's great. It's great fun. And I think what we do really well is we tell stories brilliantly. We tell people's stories really brilliantly. We get into issues. And I think the main thing is when people are watching television in the morning and they're making their breakfast at the same time and putting their toast in the toaster, you actually do want to distract them. You want to stop them stirring that cup of tea because they want to watch what we're talking about. So, it is a great show. It's a great show to work on with a brilliant team, which is what I think keeps me there so long, because it is mad. We work some very mad hours. You don't always have a lot of sleep. I'm lucky in that I can sleep on a clothesline, so that suits me fine. But you really need to work as a team when you're working some strange hours and you're trying to get a show together at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
I completely relate to that, because even though I don't get up as early as you do, when we're filming It's Me or the Dog, or filming the Dog Academy, it really does. Your experience really does depend on the team that you are working with. Yeah. And it's almost, because I'm on the road all the time, especially with It's Me or the Dog, we're just on the road. So we're going from house to house to house. We're staying in different hotels every night, almost. And it's a weird life. So your crew becomes your family. Mm. That's it. And it doesn't really give you much space outside.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. And I think that's why I'm sort of quite... And this sounds really antisocial. It's not meant to be, but I think I'm somebody who's very precious with my time and who I spend my time with, because I don't always feel like I have a huge amount of time. And when I do have free time, I most of the time like to spend it with dogs.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And of course, that's why you're here, because this is the Positively podcast, which we are talking about dogs here. And that brings me to the fact that you have a platform and that you use your platform. And I follow you on social media, and I see on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all of the things that you do. But you definitely use your platform for the greater good. And that brings me to 2017 and 2018, when you find yourself in South Korea. Can you tell me about that journey, and why were you there in South Korea?
Yeah, I'd never been there before, but I ended up there because of a newspaper article I read in the UK one morning when I was at work, and we get all the newspapers come in about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I look at all the front pages. And this front page popped out at me, which was a special investigation into the dog meat trade in Asia. This investigation was actually in South Korea. And it was exposing the horrors of the dog meat trade with the charity Humane Society International, and the work and the campaign that was being launched to try and end it in South Korea and in other parts of Asia. And there was pictures of dogs crammed in cages on these farms, and dogs that had been rescued from these farms. And then as I read further down the article, I saw that some of the dogs that had been rescued from these farms were coming to the UK to get a second chance at life. And something just took hold of me, and I'd already got 2 dogs at the time, and something just took hold of me, and I just thought, right, I want to rehome one of these dogs. And I remember as a child being aware of the practice of eating dogs, eating cats, which I'm not casting judgment on, but I was very aware of it. And I suppose as somebody who, lived in the UK, to me it was anathema, although now I know that I'm not quite sure there's that much difference between eating cows, pigs and sheep, but that's another debate. But I was very aware of it as a child, and it really, really traumatized me, I think. So actually reading this article had a massive effect on me, and I wouldn't normally have read it, and I don't know what made me, but thank God I did, because it led me to going out to South Korea to actually do my own filming for Good Morning Britain, to look and explore the whole issue, of eating dog.
And I know
which is a tough one for a lot of people.
It is a tough one, and obviously this is a tough subject for this podcast. But I think it's a subject that needs to be talked about, because there's some of it that it does have a happy ending, and of course, you experiencing or reading that article and going out there to South Korea. Actually just not once but twice, has led you to some very important beings in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So after reading that article, I started getting on the phone, making inquiries, asking questions, as us journalists do, finding out, where these dogs were, if they'd all been adopted, if there were any that hadn't been, blah, 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 blah. And it led me, sorry, Victoria, I do this a lot, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
but it
that's
led
me
me
too.
to going to a foster home where a little dog who at the time was called Poppet, she just got into foster care. She'd been in the UK a few weeks. She'd just been spayed. I'd seen a picture of her, and she was, to all intents and purposes, a Chihuahua mix. God knows what else she was mixed with. Well, I've got an idea actually now because I had her DNA done. But I went down to see her. I took my 2 other dogs to see how they got on. I took my mum because my mum's opinion is always very important. And I met Bindi, and she was terrified. I mean, she was feral almost. You could not get near her. She was hiding under tables. You know what it would be like.
Yeah.
But there was just something that connected me to her because I saw in this dog an animal that I knew could grow in confidence and still be the most amazing pet friend, no matter what her background was. So that day, I left with her, and I brought her home. By the time I'd walked in the front door, I'd already changed her name. Me and my mum had already changed her name to Bindi, partly because I narrowed it down because I'd already got two Tibetan Terriers, one called BG, which stands for Bloody Gorgeous, and another Tibetan Terrier called Billy Boy. So I knew I wanted another dog whose name began with B, which is quite stupid. But anyway, that narrowed the list down. I walked in the house with Bindi, and my dad took one look at her because he'd been at home waiting, and he went, "You're absolutely mad getting a third dog. What are you doing? You haven't got time, da-di-da-di-da-di-da." Well, I tell you what, I put her in his arms, and it took maybe 20 minutes, and he was absolutely besotted. And no, I mean, not that she really stayed there very long because she was just so nervous. But that first evening, I remember I just lay on the floor with her at her level, and I just lay on the floor for about 3 or 4 hours, and I waited and I waited, and she eventually just came over to me and lay down beside me, and that was the first major step. And I thought, yeah, we're going to be okay. There's quite a journey to go on, but we're going to be okay.
How incredible.
Yeah, and that was 5 years ago.
See, that shows such remarkable trust, doesn't it? And I think that shows the power of the dog when they've been through such a trauma, and then they transition in a totally different country with people that they don't know. And she has that resilience just to go, maybe this person's going to be okay. And that courage to come and lie next to you. Unbelievable. You see, that's what amazes me about dogs, is because they're so incredibly adaptable, because they are resilient. And when humans fail them, as they often do, they still will give you a chance.
Yeah.
That is their power, isn't it? That is their power. So, okay, Bindi is in your life. Now, what about Robin?
So Master Robin, or Robin, aka Thugface, as I call him on social media, because he's so cute, but my God, he can be a little horror. He came into my life because after obviously going out to South Korea and filming, I'd obviously forged a good relationship with Humane Society International, and I was always getting updates on, dog rescues and farms that were being closed. And I heard about some more dogs that were coming to the UK. Another farm was getting shut down. The charity does brilliant work in which you know about, in encouraging farmers to leave the trade and giving them a grant to set up in another business that doesn't involve animals, and then the charity dismantles the farm and gets every dog out, and it can be 200 dogs or more. And most of them actually go to America and Canada, but luckily a few also come to the UK. So I heard about this latest farm closure, which I think was number 13, that the charity had closed. Hundreds upon hundreds of dogs they've now rescued. I cannot tell you what amazing work they do. Well, I can tell you because you know
Yes.
yourself. To tell listeners, I should say. And I saw pictures of the dogs that were coming to the UK, and they can be, all shapes and sizes. And I think there's a perception when you talk about dog meat farms that they're all, mixed breeds and dogs that you wouldn't recognise. But you see golden retrievers, dogs that have been in the show ring at Crufts. I remember one farm I went to, there was an Afghan hound that was obviously in the sorriest of states, but French bulldogs, and on this list, alongside golden retrievers and goodness knows what else, was this picture of this 5-month-old puppy that was the cutest dog I've ever seen in my life. He'd got this sort of, well, he just melted me. And they said to me at the charity, at HFSI, Pip, do you fancy Robin? I was like, oh God, I'm not sure. I'd only lost my eldest Tibetan Terrier a few months previous, so you go through that whole thing, don't you? Is it fair? Is it fair to the dog I lost to have another dog so quickly? And I was going out to South Korea anyway, purely as a volunteer, because I wanted to help shut another farm down. So I went out and I met Robin. And that took about, 5 seconds before I thought, oh God, here we go again. Here we go again. Another dog meat trade survivors coming to live with me. And actually, because it had been the most fabulous experience seeing Bindi transform, I wasn't worried about it. It was just, another little being in the house who slots in, and that's the best way to do it. They just slot into your life, and then you lots of TLC.
Yeah, and I do want to explore that because I think transitioning a dog that has been through trauma into your home, it takes a lot of time and patience and understanding. But I do want to ask you, and I will be asking you, maybe some of the things that you did to help your dog's transition. But in 2019, the Humane Society International contacted me and asked me if I would like to come to South Korea and to help them shut down. And I think it was Farm 15. That rings a bell. But I think they've done so many farms since then that I don't know exactly the number. But I know that you had been before. And I had seen some of your coverage. And I had also been helped at HS or HSI or HS UK to deliver those signatures to the Chinese embassy to stop Yulin Dog Meat Festival and other festivals in China, which are absolutely horrific. So I said yes. And so in September 2019, I followed in your footsteps, Pip, and I went to South Korea. And obviously you stay in Seoul, and then sometimes it can be 2 to 3 hours before you get to some of these farms. Yeah. And I have to say, I think I was so impressed with what HSI is doing, and they work with their partners in Seoul as well, and with the UK. And I think I was so impressed with what they're doing because they're not, the farmer was there working with us.
Yeah.
And that was shocking to me because I thought, I've done loads of puppy mill busts here. I've done loads of dog fighting busts here. I mean, I kind of know it. They're arrested and they're put in handcuffs and taken away, right? So, but here was the farmer helping us. And that, I think, was a shock.
Yeah. It was an eye-opener on every level. Arriving there, the smell, the sounds, the sights. I mean, it's tough, isn't it? It is tough.
Yeah, it is tough. It's tough. It's tough, and the rats are everywhere. And I don't know whether you experienced the spiders too. These massive banana spiders where we were,
Right.
that are literally in front of
I came across them.
every cage. I can't probably, and they can be as big as your hand. I mean, they're so huge, and they bite. But
Right.
and in the mornings when people literally are just like pushing cobwebs away, because it's really in a rural area where we were. And so I just remember being assaulted by all these massive yellow and black spiders and thinking I can't even get to the dogs. And seeing these dogs, and exactly what you said, I was like, what is a golden retriever doing here?
Yeah.
It's not just Jindos and Popcake dogs and the what is a golden retriever? What's a Boston Terrier doing? What is a Chihuahua doing here? I mean, I was shocked. And then that's when I learned that some of these farms are actually, they are sort of part puppy mill. So they will sell the puppies. Then they're part dog meat. And those are usually sort of the Popcake dogs. And then they are part dog fighting rings as well. So those are the Jindos. And so I think it's just an assault on the senses, isn't it? It's just you can't actually, you can't believe you're there.
There's a word for that, and it's head F bleep bleep K.
100%.
I think what blew me away was the dogs, and we were talking about this with how resilient they are. These dogs are in the most horrific circumstances, and they are still craving that human affection, even though they have been so cruelly treated at the hands of humans. And they were up at the bars of the cage. And just to explain to listeners, these dogs are in these cages 24 hours a day. They have no bedding, so their poor little paws get ever so damaged. There's no bedding. They're lucky if they get a separate bowl of water. I think on the farm I was in, they're fed on restaurant waste. I mean, there was these huge vats of this, I don't know what you call it, slop.
Gunk.
And that's where they get the fluids from, the moisture in the food. They don't actually get a separate bowl of food. And I'd see, I saw this one dog, and he was just sitting in the empty, very dirty dog food bowl, just sitting in it. And then there'd be other dogs that all they wanted to do was just have that human touch and affection. And I just thought, how can you still be so trusting of us, of humans, after what we've already done to you? I still can't come to terms with how trusting dogs can be, even though they have suffered so incredibly at the hands of us humans. And yes, there were some dogs that were broken, that were at the back of these disgusting cages, looking so skeletal and malnourished, and they wouldn't come near you. But so many of them were the opposite.
Yes.
And they just wanted that touch. So we just spend a lot of time just putting our hands to the cage and just trying to give them a little, a little bit of affection.
Yeah, and I see that in puppy mills when we go in and close a puppy mill down. It's the same thing. You can't believe, yes, there's many very, very scared dogs. They've had no social interaction with humans, or the interaction that they have had has not been pleasant. And so some of them are very scared, and some of them are very, very shut down, and others are like, please just give me attention, give me affection, and are super, super friendly. And so so that experience, I think, opened up my eyes to this trade, where you still have to, even if you don't respect it, understand the culture there, and that the younger generation are growing up, and they are, because I would say dog ownership or guardianship, however you want to say it, is becoming more popular there, that the younger generation don't really want to eat those animals that
No.
are now in their homes. And so, and also the rural areas maybe have a bit more catching up to do than the cities. Did you
Yeah.
find
I
that
mean,
as well?
yeah. I mean, it seems to be, the older generations that they've known nothing different, and it's not expensive to run a dog meat farm. So I suppose it's a straightforward way of making money. But I remember hearing and really witnessing as well that when the farmers, which as you say were there, they were sort of helping the charity in many ways. When they actually see how how people from HSI were interacting with the dogs, they were like, oh my God, it's they're not just food. I mean, they're not food. There's so much more to them. They're sentient beings. So they were learning as well. And I don't have any anger towards them. I've got a lot of respect for those farmers that have actually left the trade and moved on to something else, and are spreading the word to their neighbours, because it becomes a word of mouth thing. What's been going on over the years, as more and more people have owned dogs in South Korea, there's been maybe a distinction made between a pet dog and a dog meat dog. So I think the farm Bindi was on, my little Chihuahua mix, the farmer had a dog that looked just like Bindi, but that was a pet dog, whereas Bindi was seen as a dog meat dog. But I think that is changing so much. Great strides are being made, and I'm optimistic that it won't be that long before there aren't any dog meat farms there.
I'm hoping, and so I definitely, if you want to find out more about this, then I would definitely go on the Humane Society International's site, and you will be able to see all kinds of stories of their experiences shutting down these dog meat farms, and also, as you say, giving these farmers different professions to go to, maybe something in arable farming instead. Mm-hmm. But what was interesting was that my farm was next to, the farm that I went to was right next to, it seemed like they were growing cabbages or lettuces next door. I don't know whether that was his land or not, but all of the excrement and all of the disgusting stuff from whatever was on the floor, which I think wasn't just dog poop, was bleeding into, especially when it was rained, it was bleeding into this field of lettuces and cabbages and things.
Wow.
And so not only is that, I mean, you've got a major environmental hazard there as well, which is going to affect people when they eat that stuff. So it was a real eye opener. Yeah. So I please support HSI, please support their work. And of course, here, the Humane Society of the United States as well, they do amazing work just to raise awareness about animal issues, and that, this isn't just a South Korean issue. This is an issue around the world. And, it's something that I know that you and I feel very strongly about. But how difficult was it? You've now got this. Well, first of all, you have Bindi, then you get Robin. How difficult was it for you to transition them into your home? Because, of course, they don't know what a roof is over their head. They're confined in a different place now, but there's different noises and smells and people around them that want to touch them and hold them, and very odd place to go from one thing to another. How did you transition them, and what challenges did you have?
So with Bindi, it was a case of lots of time and patience. Things that I thought might terrify her didn't. So household noises, for example, I thought that's going to freak her out. The sound of the washing machine, the kettle boiling, that wasn't a problem. What seemed to be a problem was, well, I'll give you one example, was she would almost forget you or forget what you looked like. You might be able to help explain this one, Victoria, but I would put a change of clothes on that she hadn't seen before, and I would come down the stairs and she would be absolutely terrified. I remember I put on a new dress one day, and it was actually quite a nice dress. It wasn't because it was a horrible dress. It was a nice dress. But she was physically shaking so much that she wet herself. And I couldn't understand that, because I thought, well, but I look the same, my face, I smell the same, and I would think smell's a hugely important thing for a dog. So why has me changing my outfit triggered this dog? And she was terrified. The other thing she couldn't cope with, and she still can't, doesn't matter whether it's me or anybody else, carrying things. So if you're carrying a box, or you've got a suitcase, or you're shopping, she's straight behind the sofa. People that are, particularly men, but I would say anybody who, say in winter, has got a thick coat on, hat, scarf, gloves, terrified. And I don't think that will ever leave her. So there are certain situations that I'm always wary about putting her into. So if we go to, say, a cafe, a coffee shop, if it was very crowded, she would be overwhelmed by that, even if I'm holding her. And then you have people coming near to her and, going coochie coochie coo, and she just cannot, it's just too much for her. It's like all her senses are assaulted. So, but she's unique, and she's my little Bindi, and at home with the people she trusts, which I would say I could count on the fingers of one hand, which is me, obviously, my mum, which interestingly, my mum was the person I brought her home with. My dad. Now, my dad is the only man that she trusts.
Wow.
My brother, who I see a lot, who she's met a lot, she doesn't trust him. I think maybe it's because she heard him shouting at his kids one day, and that sent her into a panic. But yeah, mostly women. But once people have won her trust, that's she's their friend for life. But you have to just let her go at her own pace. And normally what happens if somebody new comes to the house, I try and get them to, and you can tell me if this is the right thing to do, Victoria, but I ask them to sort of give her little treats and sort of throw the treats in her direction. She wouldn't come near them for them, but just little baby steps. And, we've got to the point now, and actually, as time's gone on, she settles much, much more quickly. But yeah, she's a traumatized dog, and I think that will always stay with her. But she is the most loving, sensitive soul, and she knows if I come home and I'm sad or I'm upset, she's right by my side. But she's also quite independent. She can be very sassy. She's the top dog with the others. She's small, but my goodness, she can hold her own. Yeah, she's wonderful, and we all absolutely adore her as a family. Every little part of her, and to see the photos of her when she first arrived in the UK, this scrawny, malnourished little thing. Her coat was just awful, and to look at the pictures of her now, and the best thing was, because I can let her off the lead, it took a few months to train her, but she can run free, and that was the most amazing thing. It took about 6 months, and I trained her on a long leash, and just to see her running through fields, running free, is the most amazing thing in the world.
How incredible! Look, I think you're experiencing what so many people experience that have adopted dogs from different traumatic situations: dog meat farms, dog fighting rings, puppy mills, sort of similar experiences. And I think probably why she's reacting to you like that is that actually I do find, and it's not just with dogs that have come from traumatic situations, it is that very important, obviously, socialization window that dogs have to have pleasant experiences to sort of build up that stress inoculation, that resilience that has to happen really between the ages of 3 and 12 weeks. And then during different fear periods as they grow, you know, any kind of traumatic experiences or unpleasantness during those fear periods can really have a lifetime impact. So I think what she's just doing is, and we find a lot with these dogs, is they go back to what we call their default behavior. So that even though she's now had that experience with you, that approach, you're wearing something different, she does know it's you, but I think it's the default behavior of the approach, suddenly you coming into view, that takes her right back. So, and so that stress, stress response will kick in. It is literally just the way that her body is trying to survive, or her brain tells her, human being coming, get out of there.
Yeah.
My Chihuahua does something quite similar. We got her when she was 6 months old. Her former people, all we know is that they brought her to the rescue shelter in a box and just shoved her at the front desk staff and said, she poops everywhere. We keep her in a crate, but we're done with her now. And so I know when she came to us, she was very scared of people. And so sometimes, even now when we come through the gate, she will go back to her default behavior of like, who's that? And then she will react accordingly. And then once she knows it's you, she goes, oh, okay. Or once, then I'm sure when Bindi knows it's you, then she's like, oh, okay, then I'll come out and I know that I'm safe. But it's just that body's response. And it is that survival instinct that takes over. And it's not because your dog can't see.
Do you think that that instinct stays with that dog for life?
Yes.
Because I see the progress she's made in so many ways.
Yes.
But there's still those little triggers that are there after 5 years.
Yep, 100%. And so the brain does not erase particularly fear memories. So your dog, I don't know, somebody could come round, a guest could come round, and you know, you've raised your dog from a puppy, and then somebody comes round and steps on it just by accident. That one experience can set up a lifetime of distrust, of fear, and that person or that particular situation can always be uncomfortable. Yeah. So the way that we work through dogs with fear is like you're saying, it's like time and patience, and doing with what your guests do when they come in, is that don't go up and try and touch these dogs. Don't get into her space, but pair them with great things. So somebody comes to the door, throw those treats. Fabulous. And always, and I think what you did, which was so beautiful, is that you didn't crowd her. You lay on the ground when she first came into your home, and you waited for her to make that decision that I'm now going to lie next to you. Huge. But I think we want to have connection so much that with these dogs, we want to go up and touch and hold and hug. And these dogs don't want it. Let them make the decision first. So I think that what you did there was really, really smart. But it's nothing to do with you when you come down the stairs and something different. It's that default behavior that is important for survival. And that will never, ever leave her. And I think also what you said as well is really important for people to know. If you are going to adopt one of these dogs that have had these experiences, and I always encourage people, please, if you know that you're the type of person that can deal with this and has that time and that patience and also has a support system, because it does sound like you have a great support system around you, then go ahead, because you will have friends for life. You will have a dog that is so loyal to you and that trusts you so much, and then you see that beautiful progression like you are now, when now Bindi's running off the lead, having the time of her life. Yeah, she's got challenges. She'll always have challenges. But you've worked it out. Amazing.
I understand her.
Yeah, you understand her. Now, Robin, did you have similar issues with him, or was it very different?
It was very different with Robin, and I wonder whether that was because he was rescued from the farm just those couple of months, 3 months maybe earlier, because he seemed much more socialized, much less nervous of people. And yeah, just simply not as traumatized as Bindi. And don't get me wrong, when he meets new people, he is a little bit, keep back, and he needs to just have time to work them out. But there's not the same triggers with Bindi. I think with Robin, what I would say the one thing is that he can be a little bit too confident with other dogs. And he has a very intense bond with me. So he likes to be in the same room as me at all times. I'm surprised, actually. He was at my feet, but normally he's lying at my feet. He's lying next to me on the sofa. Our bodies have to be touching. I take him to bed with me, Victoria, which I know is...
No, it's actually not. It's people think that I'm the person that's like, don't sleep with your dog, don't. But I'm really not. It's just that I work with a lot of people whose dogs don't let them get into bed, or so that's where they have to come off the bed. But no, my Chihuahua sleeps in my bed. So carry
fine.
on. Yes.
Well, so Bindi, I can leave her in the kitchen at night on her bed, happy as Larry. Robin will not stay in that kitchen with her if he knows I'm in the house. If he knows I'm not there and I'm out, not a problem. So he comes to bed with me, and if anything, he's been a little bit too confident. So my other Tibetan Terrier, who's now nearly 14, who is not a dominant dog at all, for the first few months, him and Robin were fine, but then Robin suddenly realised he could bully Billy a bit, because Billy wasn't going to stand up to him. Doesn't do it to Bindi because she can hold her own. And also because my Tibetan Terrier is very attached to me as well. So in an evening, I've got one on one side of me, one on the other, and Bindi can quite happily be in the other room. So that's taken a little bit of managing at times to make them understand that you've both got love from me. You don't need to be jealous. But yeah, Robin's a different kettle of fish. He's much more confident, I would say, much more confident.
What would you say then? What would your advice be to people that are thinking that either have adopted a dog from a similar situation in their home or are thinking of doing so? What would you say to them?
Rescue, I believe, is always the way to go if you can. But you obviously have to be aware that that dog is not going to be a blank canvas. It takes time and patience. So as long as you've got the time and the patience and the love to give them, and you've done your research, don't expect a dog, and this goes for any dog, don't expect a dog to think like you. You have to think like the dog. And if you do rescue a dog, it is the most incredibly rewarding thing you will ever do. But you've got to think about it.
I always say that, for obviously because on my show, but also off my show, I'm working with dogs from all kinds of situations, and that's why I'm quite busy. But that I do think what you said is really important, that people need to meet the dog where they're at and understand what it's like to be a dog, understand dog. And so I always say, try and sort of see the world from your dog's point of view. What are your dog's needs and wants, right? So, of course, we all need water and feeding. We all need to be safe and comfortable. But what does your dog want? What does your dog want in order for your dog to feel comfortable and to feel safe? How can you provide that? What would your dog ask you if he or she could just sit you down and say, hey, for 10 minutes, I can speak in your language and you stupid human will actually understand me. And this is what I want. This is what I need. So ask yourself those questions. And are you the type of person that can give to give your dog what it needs? And then you don't need people like me to come into your home to help fix things. Or you just need a trainer to help teach your dog a whole load of different skills and help them cope within this kind of crazy, weird domestic environment that they live in with us. So even though dogs are adaptable, even though they are resilient, and even though they're really, really good at reading people and getting on with people, there will be challenges, and you have to face those challenges, because the worst thing you can do for a dog that's been through trauma is to put it back into trauma. We do not want dogs going back into the rescue shelter or now yo-yoing from home to home, because that in itself is traumatic. So I think that's my bit of advice as well, is to really, really think about it before you go down that path. Because again, I mean, you know this, we say this all the time, dogs are not disposable property. If for some reason it's not working out, if it really, you tried everything and it's not working out, well, then sometimes that happens. And sometimes the dog does better being rehomed. And I've done some cases where I think this is not the right family for this dog. This dog needs to be rehomed. And the rehoming has gone very well, and the dog's very happy in their new home. But with the rescue shelters pretty full in the UK and certainly full here in the United States, we encourage people to really do your homework before, because there's nothing worse than this poor dog yo-yoing from place to place.
And it's like, I don't know what it's like in the US or whether it's as bad, but the number of people that bought dogs during lockdown and now suddenly they're not able to keep them anymore because that remote working has ended. We've also got, a cost of living crisis over here. You've got to factor in the fact that dogs do cost. If you're going to look after them properly, they do cost. And the number of dogs that are being given up because of lockdown really gets me angry.
We do see it here. It's been awful. And I think, during the pandemic, everybody was so excited that, oh my gosh, all of the rescue shelters there were no dogs in rescue, and the breeders were loving it, and the puppy millers were loving it. Everybody wanted dogs. But we knew what was going to happen. We knew when that cute little puppy didn't suit their needs anymore, or when things opened up, that there was a potential that the shelters would fill up again. And here where I am in Atlanta, which is down in the south, just above Florida, we have our shelters are full. I mean, we have such a desperate pet overpopulation problem that we are trying to work on. But a lot of our shelters are just full, and a lot of those are bully breed type dogs. Probably, I would say, about sort of 70% of them. So we did see that issue here, and of course, with the cost of living being just going up and up here as well. You're right. Having dogs is very expensive. I have now 2 elderly dogs. They are very expensive. Their medical needs are mount up as they get older. So, yeah, as much as also the dog is transitioning into your home, you have to understand that your life is going to change considerably. And it does sound, Pip, like you do have that good support system because, of course, as a journalist, you are traveling around everywhere, so that you do have that good support system and it's working.
That's seriously good advice.
Well, Pip, thank you so much for joining us. I now see you on the sofa, that you have Bindi there with you. What a little treasure. I love that Chihuahua face.
She's so glorious. What else do you think she's mixed with?
She looks a little bit like, what's that word? There definitely seems to be a little sort of pot cakey dog about her, but like not a Samoyed, but something.
Yeah, you're quite close.
What?
Well, when I had a DNA done, we worked out 36% of her. So about 12% Chihuahua, 12% Japanese Spitz, 12% Korean Jindo,
Wow.
and then 60 odd percent, we have no idea.
So I was right about the Spitz part.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a
Amazing.
little Spitz.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say she looks like a little Arctic fox,
She
and
does.
she's got the corkscrew tail, you know, the Spitz tail.
Does she really? Oh, she's divine. And then I know you've got Robin close by as well. Now that
Yeah,
you've
Robin's sort
moved.
of fast asleep next to me. He's been very antisocial. Robin, let's say hello.
Do you know what though? It's lovely though seeing that they're just so comfortable with you. And at
Oh,
the end of the day, if that's all these dogs were, wow, what a massive
come here.
transition
I know they
and a
they are
success.
absolutely adorable. Come here and say hello. Come on then.
Oh
Here he
gosh.
is.
And of course I see so much on your social media. I just look at him.
He's
He's
a licker.
again. Oh, he's like, yeah, I just want to say hello. He's beautiful. So, Pip, I could keep calling you either Philip or Pip, but Pip, now I know people in the UK, they can watch you on Good Morning Britain, so do it. But on social media, where would they find you?
They would find me at Pip Tomson on Twitter, Tomson. I have the most awkward spelling of a surname. And on Instagram as Pip Tomson. And you can also follow, which actually I'd rather people did, is to follow Bindi and Robin on Instagram, because they really are, flying the flag for the campaign to end the dog meat trade. So you can find them at Bindi Thompson and Robin, aka Thugface.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, I'm going to follow because I don't think I follow. I know I follow you on Instagram, but I don't think I followed them. So I'm going to be following them. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. Really appreciate you talking about this subject. And just keep flying the flag. Go out there and carry on doing what you're doing and raising real awareness about different animal issues. We really cannot thank you enough for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I've absolutely loved this conversation. So thank you, Victoria. And thank you for the advice as well.
Well, good. I hope that
advice.
I think you've done amazingly. Really, I do. And, but yeah, anytime. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. And I will see you again soon. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively Podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit her official website at positively.com. Become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell, and follow her on Twitter at Victoria S. Be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together. Positively.